Welcome back everyone to the Hello World Guy. This is another episode of the C programming series. So to begin with our program, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to first of all create an integer called number is equal to 0, and this game is essentially going to be a number guessing game, and we are going to use this to basically we are going to provide a random number to the user and have the user guess that number. But we will how to produce a random number, we will discuss that in a second. First of all, we will just set it to 0 for now, just as a placeholder, and I am actually going to create another number called guess, which will be the user's guess, which we will store and set that to 0 as well, because we are going to read it anyways. And we are going to say while guess is not equal to number. Actually, we are going to keep running this loop, and since our generated random number can be 0, we want to set the guess to be -1, so that it does not actually not run the loop on the first try. So let's go ahead and say if guess is less than number. So if the guess that the user gives is less than number, we are going to say too low, so that the user knows that they need to put a higher number. Else, if the guess is greater than number, then we will say too high. And if that is not the case, then it means that the guess is actually equal to the number, which means the user did it, so we can say you did it. I'm going to add the new lines here, and of course we need to ask the user to enter the guess, and we need to take the guess value from the user. Alright, so this is essentially the basic layout of our program, but the problem is pretty obvious that we currently do not have this number randomized. It's just 0. So we can go ahead and do that by using a function in C called rand. Now this function, if you try to type out rand, you can see it does not actually work. The reason is that for this function we need to add another include here. So stdio.h is basically for handling input and output, and for this function we need to actually include the standard library or stdlib.h. Which contains a bunch of miscellaneous functions. So stdlib.h, and we can go ahead and say rand now, and say like this, and this should actually produce a random number between it can be any value. There's a constant called rand max, and this can be operating system specific, but in order to make sure that it stays within a specific range, let's say 1000, we are going to say we are going to use this modulus operator. The way this modulus operator works is that it essentially takes the remainder, and the remainder is never greater than this, so it will always be between 0 and 999 to be exact, because the remainder can never be equal to or greater than this number. So yeah, that's pretty awesome, and that should essentially work for our purposes. But we are going to add a couple of more things in here, which is that when we are doing this, we are actually going to first of all tell the user to what we are doing. We will inform the user of that, and something like this will work. We will say I have a number between 0 and 1000, and can you guess it, and that should be enough to start the game. One thing you might notice is that this statement can get quite long, because this is quite a long sentence, and if you want it to break it into multiple statements, you can just do that by adding this. So you can put two of these together, and C++ will sorry, not C++, the C compiler will automatically combine these two strings. You don't need to put any operator here, nothing, just put two pieces of strings separate, and it will do that. So this is a really nice little trick. So yeah, with this our program should essentially work. So now let's go ahead and test it. So to compile this, I am going to just go ahead and say gc. Actually, why is it not working? It kind of stopped responding PowerShell. Okay, so let's go ahead and say gcc hello.c, like that, and it should compile it without any errors, hopefully, and you can see that it works. And now let's go ahead and run our program. So you can see it says I have a number between 0 and 1000, can you guess it? And I say something like 500, and it will say too high, and then I can say something like 200, and it will say too high still. If we say something like 100, it will still say too high. So I can go ahead and reduce it even more to 50. It's still too high. What? So 2 is too low and 50 is too high. So now let's go ahead and say something like 30. It's still too low, which means it's above 30, which means we can 40, which means let's try 45, and that's too high, which means it can either be between these 5. So let's go and say 43, and you can see it's still too high, and 42 is still too high, which means it can only be 41, and we did it. So yeah, this is a fun little game. But if you run this program again, actually let me clear this first terminal, and now let's go ahead and run the program again. And as soon as I do that, if I say 41, you can see that it still works. And no matter how many times you run the program, it will always give the same result. It might not be 41, that depends on your computer, it will be different for different devices, but it will be the same. The reason for that is that if I go under my program, the main reason that this is occurring is because this random function is not actually having any seed. The seed basically allows us to actually randomize this, and as long as there's the same seed, we will get the same random number. So in order to fix this problem, what we can do is we can provide it with a different seed every time. But how do we provide it with a different seed? So like we can't obviously like get the program and put every different seeds every time we run it. So how can we like get a number that's going to be different every time we run the program? So one thing in this universe that does not like repeat itself is time. So what we can do is we can, in order to actually set the seed, you go ahead and say srand, which stands for seed rand, and now you're supposed to put a seed here, which is going to be an unsigned int. If you say something like 98, it will base some value of that seed. You can't guess what the value is, of course, until you actually run the program, but it will be still the same even though a different value than the last compilation. But we can do that by fix that by saying time, and we can add this here and say null. Now why we are saying null here? Because this actually allows us to like have a time structure and put this into here. You don't need to worry about that, since we have not discussed structures or pointers yet, so you might not understand this. But let's just leave that, and just remember you need to put null inside of time, and this function returns the number of seconds since system startup. So this is guaranteed to be always different. I mean, it will repeat it at some point if the user tries the program again, but it will most of the time be random. So yeah, it will work for a small game like this. So if I go here and I compile it again, and you can see it gives an error because it says implicit declaration. The reason is that the time function is not actually present in the stdlib.file. We want to make sure we have included time.h as well. And now let's go ahead and compile it and then clear our screen so that I can start the program again. And now it should say a different number. If I say 80, you can see it's too low this time. So if I say 300, it's still too low. I can say something like 600, it's too low still. 900 is too low again, which means it's quite near the upper edge. It's too high now. So let's try 920, it's too low. 930 is too high, which means 925 is too high, which can only mean it's 922. No, it's too low, which means 923 or 924. So 923, and yeah, we did it. So yeah, this is a really fun little game that you can play whenever you want to, and this is really simple to implement, and we learned a lot of different things, and we did a lot of applications of the different things we have learned in this program. So yeah, this was pretty much it for this video. I will see you in the next one, in which we'll continue our C learning journey. And make sure to like and subscribe and share this video with other people, and also make sure that you practice these programs yourself and try to make a couple of cool things, your own ideas, so that you really get a grasp of the C language. So I will see you in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one, and bye.